Override session began this afternoon in Baton Rouge, and there was no delay in action.
You see video right here. Protesters from New Orleans pushed back against a bill that would ban transgender girls from joining girls' school sports teams.
Danny Monteverdi has the story from the state capitol.
State lawmakers have up to 5 days to make their cases during this veto session, but they made quick work Tuesday of the two biggest bills up for debate. Meanwhile, there were some fireworks in the House chamber as protesters clashed with security.
Senate Bill 156 has got to go.
Members of the Real Name campaign, an advocacy group for transgender people, unfurled a banner in the House gallery Tuesday morning. They urged state lawmakers to keep Governor Bel Edwards' veto of Senate Bill 156. That bill, authored by State Senator Beth Mizell, would ban transgender girls from playing school sports, and it divided lawmakers.
Quite frankly, members, I'm convinced that this bill is a solution looking for a problem, and it is a political issue.
Senator Karen Carter-Peterson warned it could hurt Louisiana and described it as a bill that could have a deep financial impact on New Orleans and all of the state.
You either want business to come to Louisiana or you want to discriminate. We're about to make a decision.
Ultimately, the Senate voted 26-12 to override the governor's veto. Mizell, who authored the bill, says it's one that constituents want.
If you have not heard the voices of the large majority of people in this state by emails, by phone calls, by personal visits, there's no words I can give you.
Meanwhile, they voted 23-15 to keep in place the governor's veto on a bill that would have loosened restrictions on concealed carry laws. The State House of Representatives will take up the trans youth sports bill Wednesday at 1 p.m. Reporting at the Capitol, Danny Monteverdi, Eyewitness News.